right, welcome to Edge Radio 99.3 FM on Friday at 5:07 p.m. This is Media Mothership, and we're broadcasting out of the creaky old Edge Radio Studios, the Edge Radio Studios in Hobart, Tasmania. We're also streaming on YouTube and Twitch, which you can find us by searching for Media Mothership. I, of course, am host Dr. Craig, PhD, joined by BA, or maybe Mr. BA Zeke. I'm trying to get the naming right. So if I'm Dr. Craig, PhD, you would be Mr. Zeke, BA.
Yeah.
Which loses the BA Zeke vibe, so maybe maybe we'll do PhD Craig, Doctor, and BA Zeke, Mr.
I do like the BA Zeke.
Yeah.
I think I've grown quite attached to it.
It's really layered intertextually, semiotically. So today's show, we're, as always, going to explore how the media shapes our understanding of the world around us. Today we're going into a wonderful deep dive. We're actually doing unlive experimental research here on Edge Radio in Media Mothership, exploring the way in which the analysis of camera work in horror films, given Halloween. October is around the corner, as well as Halloween, as decorations in various, supermarkets are now foretelling.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of the Halloween decorations already. So we're doing horror films, and we're going to be exploring the 1959 Vincent Price classic, House on Haunted Hill. And what we're doing as this project unfolds over the next, I think we did the numbers, I think it's something like 32 weeks.
Yeah, something like that. We're going to do 5 minutes?
Yes.
5-minute segments, and that goes for like half a year or something? Or...
That's right. Yeah, so House on Haunted Hill goes for a total of 1 hour and 14 minutes, and we're breaking it into 5-minute chunks to analyze the ways in which camera work is specifically created to create particular emotions in horror films. Now, it's based off a really interesting bit of research, so I'm encouraging people to play along at home with us. This is a research article called Analysis of Camera Work in Horror Movies by Heimdahl, Kanematsu, Tsuruta, Motegi, Mikami, and Kondo. Is all of 6 authors. Because the more cooks you have, as you know, the better the flavor. Actually, that's not the same. Anyway, this 6-authored paper, which was presented at the Proceedings of SIGRAD, which I didn't write down what that stands for. I think it's the Scientific Institute of Graded Research Analysis Data.
Seems legit.
Yeah, all the way back in 2016 on May 23rd and 24th in Visby, Sweden. Now we're using this research project. They did a project, I forget which horror film they were looking at. They were basically unpacking how various camera angles in a horror film can convey and capture what they refer to as the 5 scales of fear. Of course, everyone knows the 5 scales of fear. We live daily telling people I'm in stage 2 of the 5 scale of fear, and to other people saying you look like you're in stage 3 of fear.
That's right.
For those that don't know, of course, there's 5 stages of fear. Terror, horror, repulsion, recovery, and background. Terror, horror, repulsion, recovery, and background. And within our analysis, basically, each one of these moments is referencing as the French would say, a mise en scène. Mise en scène? Mise en scène? That is a semiotically rich scene involving objects and characters and people and dialogue to convey a sense of terror. So that's a kind of building sense of anxiety and dread of what's about to occur. Possibly of horror, a full-blown experience of a horrific experience, like moments, the moment at which the attack occurs or something. Repulsion, if you're watching a body horror type thing, the David Cronenberg type piece, seeing some gore would be a repulsion reaction. Then they have recovery and background. Recovery is the moment after the horrific or repulsive scene, and a moment of kind of calm. But it's a kind of post-horror calm, or post-fear calm. So you're still kind of, in this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mentality. And then background, which is, everything there that's not fear.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, it can be anything. Sadness, happiness, etc., etc.
A bit of a catch-all. So basically what we've done, according to their analysis, is break down each scene in terms of a short description, the fear stage at which the scene is at. So what fear stage do we feel the director is trying to convey in the setup that they've got? The type of scene, is it dialogue, scene, and interaction? The number of people that are in that scene. The scene area, is it interior, exterior, or changing? The main subject in the film, is it the protagonist or the antagonist? For those that are learning at home, protagonist is the character for whom there is an aim, a goal, an agenda that's playing out in the course of the movie. Right, so it could be Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, whose aim is to get off Tatooine and to conduct the hero's quest, right? To kind of find out about who he is, right? The become a Jedi, right? And the antagonist is a character often that is standing in their way or creating barriers or boundaries to them. So you could say Darth Vader is an antagonist. Often they're a villain who is actively trying to work against that character in Star Wars. It would be moments at which he's, in his X-Wing, his TIE fighter, trying to shoot down that character or plot against him and so forth. So where do they fall in terms of what the character is? Is it just a supporting character? What's interesting is also breaking down the emotions. So mapping out what type of 5-state of fear the film is at, and then looking at what camera techniques are being used in that moment, and then looking at how the director is trying to convey a sense of emotion with the characters. Is the character going through anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise, or are they neutral? Right? And by mapping all this out, by looking at the 5 stages of fear, the emotions in which the character is experiencing at that moment, and the shots which the director is choosing to convey that. So are they doing an extreme close-up? Are they doing a medium shot, a knee shot, a long shot, or an extreme long shot? Equally, are they using a high, low, medium angle for the camera? Is it a point of view shot? Is it a static shot, a handheld shot, fixed shot? So all that we'll we'll unpack.
No, we'll pack it all up, we'll put it away.
That's right, it's too much. In the wonderful medium of audio. So it will be a bit of the theatre of the mind in terms of translating image into audio. But I think it's an experiment well worth conducting. Basically, by the end of this journey, we should be masters of horror and being able to create our own horror film. Yeah, which I think is our goal now. Shall I put on there as one of our Kickstarter goals?
And then we'll air it.
That's right.
Air the audio of it.
We'll produce our own in-studio horror.
That's right. It'll be so good that you can only hear the audio. We're not allowed to show you the visual, otherwise it's so good that you'll just, it's just too good.
Exactly. So, all right, what I want to firstly break down is what this film is that we've chosen. Now, we've looked at public domain films, so we can play segments of it. We won't play the entire 5 minutes, but we've chosen some choice examples of the first 5 minutes of House on Haunted Hill. It's a film produced back in 1959. How old were you then?
1999.
No, 59.
59. 0.
Well, okay, so now we've got a rough estimate of Zeke's age. So House on Haunted Hill, 59, and it's directed by the famous William Castle. Do you know anything about this director, William Castle?
No, I can't say. Obviously have seen it in watching the film. I've seen his name, but I don't really know any of his other credits.
He's an interesting guy. He is commonly associated with a type of stunt filmmaking where when you watch his film, he'll often put a kind of stunt gimmick within it to get people to come and watch it. So there was one film I know where there were odors that he released that coincided with a particular moment in the film. This one features we'll get around to it when it happens, but basically what happens is it was called the Emergo system, right? So the film became kind of well known for this promotional gimmick called the Emergo system, which in some theaters, when they showed the film, the exhibitors would rig an elaborate pulley system near the theater screen, which allowed a plastic skeleton to fly over the audience at a particular scene.
Okay.
Right, so it's meant to be immersive, and the advertising around it is kind of pushing this Emergo gimmick, so people would kind of go in there and kind of experience.
It's kind of like the 4D sort of stuff that I remember. I've only went to, I think, one 4D film or whatever.
Yes.
And they like throw water at, well, not throw water, but splash sort of droplets of water at you if you're going through like a river or something else like that. Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize it was that old, the sort of concept of a 4D.
Yeah, no. Look, it probably has its roots far back earlier in theatre. But I went to 4D as well in Japan. I went to see a Macross movie. And in that, you were seated in this seat. The seat is on hydraulics as well, so it moves as you're in the jet plane. And then, yes, it would spray water in scenes, like the jet plane was flying close to the water in one scene, and so these jets of water sprayed out over your face. Smells, there was kind of perfume. There was a character, I think a female character dialogue thing, they sprayed perfume. It was I think the first time you're experiencing it, it's difficult for it not to be distracting. And I think if you're a real fan of 4D, it would be something that you kind of immerse yourself into.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I don't know whether I'd want to do it for every film, but it was kind of interesting when I did. So.
Nah, look, and you want it to be pleasant.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some films, like the odor stuff would be, it's like, yes, you could do that, or, anyway. Well, maybe we can elaborate in this film where we see particular parts as having immersiveness. So that's William Castle. It's written by Rob White, and it stars, of course, the one and only Vincent Price. You ever seen any Vincent Price stuff before this?
I think I have. But nothing really that I can fully remember.
Of course,
I've seen his face before seeing this. I was like, well, I know him.
Yeah, I mean, he's often parodied even in The Simpsons. I mean, he passed away a long time ago, but he's often parodied.
I think that's maybe where I've seen him.
One of their kind of haunted, what are the House of Terrors?
Oh yeah, House of Horror, I think.
Every Halloween. Vincent Price, famous actor, often associated with these type of campy horror films. Also stars Carol Olmert, Richard Long, Alan Marshall, Carolyn Craig, and Elijah Cook Jr. So the basic plot is that Vincent Price is playing this eccentric millionaire, Frederick Lauren, and he, with his wife Annabelle, have invited 5 people to a house that's haunted for a party. And the pitch is, as we'll hear, is whoever can stay in this house for one night will earn themselves the hefty cash prize of $10,000. As the night progresses, there's various horror things that happen. Someone did estimate that $10,000 back in '59 would be worth about $92,000 now.
Interesting. I did think about that when you said that. I was like, oh, we should have looked up the inflation, but you're already on it. So.
Already on it. $92,000. Yep, it's nearly $100,000.
Pretty good deal.
Yeah. So the film uses all these props in carnival house to generate fear and terror. So it would be interesting to see how this unpacks. Now, interestingly, the question of public domain. Now, this film, House on Haunted Hill, ended up being one of the most successful films of the studio. So how did it fall out of their control, right? How did it go into the public domain? Well, inevitably, the story goes that the original copyright holder just failed to renew the film's copyright. He just missed the deadline, so it passed into the public domain, And this means that virtually anyone can now duplicate and sell on VHS, DVD, or on YouTube a copy of the film. Therefore, many versions of this film now are all over the place in the market. Some of them are quite poor quality, and yeah. So you can get it anywhere. So it also means that for our purposes of analysis, we can play quite a bit of it. We won't.
That's right.
But we'll play quite a bit.
Yeah, we could. If we wanted to, we could just play the entire thing. No one will come for us.
Not yet. All right, so what I want to do is set this up with the first kind of opening scene of House on Haunted Hill. And it's a really interesting scene, and it is one which... a bit of background about what we're about to hear. I've cut it, I've edited it to happen just after the screams. There's a lot of screaming that happens. And what's really interesting about this choice is that many people consider it to be back in the day, quite effective scare trick. As you've got to imagine that people would be sitting there in a cinema theater, in total darkness, and they're sitting there and suddenly they hear these noises, which we're about to play, right? And these noises are just in the darkness, so it's a completely black screen at the moment. People are settling in, and suddenly they hear these sounds. So I'll play these sounds, and you can think what level of terror you're at, what level of fear you're at. Is this horror, terror, repulsion, background, or recovery?
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. This is Vincent Price, House on Haunted Hill, opening few minutes, a few seconds of this film.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry. May I introduce myself?
Just before he does, I just want to talk a little bit more about those sound effects. It's interesting, in the IMDb page, they talk about how, that sound of rattling chains and the spooky kind of ghost voices. By many people, they consider it to be the kind of soundscape that innovated the idea of having haunting records. That is, you'd buy a record not because of the music, but because it has spooky sound effects on it. Right? It has, sound effects that you'd play in Halloween in the background of chains rattling, ghosts kind of moaning, and screams and so forth. And if you do a search on your Spotify or whatever, you'll find that there are albums specifically for horror sound effects used to play in Halloween. Back in '59, that hadn't existed, but after this movie, this idea of buying a novelty haunting record, became more and more popular. So many people see this as something which innovated that sound effect album that you could buy just to relive these moments.
Yeah.
of moaning hero. It's really lost though in translation. I don't know how you felt when you watched those first few seconds of the title cards popping up, and then the sound effects. It is a bit lost in translation when you're watching it on your own TV or laptop screen.
Yeah, it's not as good.
You need to be in dark screen. But I mean, starting it off, where would you place that? I'd place that already on the terror scale, right? Given how IMDb in the trivia have pointed out that people would have been freaked out, or some people would have been freaked out, sitting in the cinema. It goes black. Normally, you're thinking you're just going to see the title card and a nice orchestral swell and the actor names, and then you settle back and watch the movie. But instead, you got someone screaming at you in the darkness, or the movie screaming at you. So I reckon we're already at terror, right? So again, and the terror scale being one where it's trying to evoke anxiety and anticipation in the viewer.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely say that is terror. There's definitely some anticipation coming up, some suspense.
So what we've got coming up next is this plot explanation scene, which I'm treating as, a sense of sadness.
Oh yes, from him, yeah.
And kind of
Sadness,
neutral.
even fear, kind of.
So let's hear, this is the setup for the House on Haunted Hill from one of our characters.
I'm Watson Pritchard. In just a minute, I'll show you the only really haunted house in the world. Since it was built a century ago, 7 people, including my brother, have been murdered in it. Since then, I've owned the house. I've only spent one night there, and when they found me in the morning, I was almost dead.
I'm Frederick Lauren, and I've rented the house on Haunted Hill tonight so that my wife can give a party. A haunted house party. She's so amusing. There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited. If any of you will spend the next 12 hours in this house, I'll give you each $10,000. Or your next of kin in case you don't survive. Ah, but here come our other guests.
Yeah, yeah. What did you think of this opening scene? Have you ever seen anything like that before? The kind of disembodied heads of 2 characters suddenly
No,
give
I
direct
thought that
dialogue?
was really good actually. The sort of, and they sort of zoom in as well, into the sort of close up. I thought it was really good. I was like, they should do this more. I think in modern film, I don't.
It kind of breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah,
It's
it
basically
does.
these, which is a good thing, yeah, because these 2 characters are talking directly to us, the audience, saying, here's the setup of the story. Right? Sometimes you might have a wall of text, like in Star Wars. It just kind of scrolls through the setup and says, galaxy far, far away, Empire's taken over, so forth. But here, yeah, and you've got great voices there. So, yeah, it's kind of clever. Interestingly, the scene we're going to next, so what do we see next? We see these cars come through and all the characters are introduced.
That's right. 5, what are they called? Like, what are the coffin cars or?
Yeah, hearses.
Yeah, hearses, that's right.
And they pull up into, I hadn't realized this, but quite a famous house. The exterior shots, which we see in these first 5 minutes, were filmed at the historic Enos House in Los Feliz, California. And this was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright back in 24. Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not much of an architecture person, but I do know Frank Lloyd Wright's name. So yeah, that was interesting. And it's a very, do you remember the house that it's in front of? It's very kind of Art Deco.
Yeah.
Kind of. And 24 would be spot on when that period of time is. So they're setting this up. Where was your horror barometer during this first 5 minute setup?
I think it's probably still at a 1 a terror so far. It's pretty suspenseful.
Because we had the spooky sound effects, and again, historically considered to be really powerful and triggered a whole industry in creating sound effect horror music for records. Then we had the Vincent Price's voice, that kind of, the kind of setup that it's a haunted house. So yeah, maybe anticipation, terror, building up. One thing I liked about it, and I might see if I can skip through slightly, just to play the kind of, they've got like a theremin, that kind of like, well, I'll play it, kind of theremin music. So I'll play a short snippet of some of the background music that's in this scene.
Did you?
Yeah, and that's the first 5 minutes. What did you think of that great kind of like organ music that comes on, the theremin? 1959, peak 1959 horror music score.
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed actually the score. I didn't realize it was a what do you call it?
Theremin.
Theremin, yeah, because I know what it is. I didn't realize, but listening to it now, thinking that, I can hear it quite clearly.
That kind of warbling sound. Yeah, it's fantastic. And, you know, I guess it's a bit of a cliche. What's interesting about unpacking a film from 59 is what now would be considered quite a cliche. And if you were to do a second or two of it in a contemporary film, it would be considered really heavy-handed. It's like, oh, well, obviously you're setting up the terror moment and the horror moment. You've got the spooky sound effects and so forth. So a bit of an education. I'm curious to see how the film develops. You got any thoughts about where it's going to go next?
Well, I think obviously they're going to go into the house. But I'm not too sure how it'll go from there. They could meet Vincent Price's character, or maybe they'll just wander around a house and some skeletons or something. I know it must be something to do with skeletons, considering you said there was that sort of 4D element.
Yeah, the Emergo system.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we use the correct technological
Yeah,
terms.
yeah.
The Emergo system. Yeah, well, this film has, what do you reckon its rating is out of 10 on IMDb?
Oh, out of 10? For a second I thought you meant like PG or whatever, so like that kind of rating, but out of 10...
What do you reckon?
maybe like a 7.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you round it up, it is. So it's a 6.8 on IMDb. Interestingly, if you look at the metrics, rating by demographic, female raters gave this a 7 out of 10, and the male raters gave it 6.7, which averages out to 6.8. So, yeah, interesting there, gender unpacking. But yeah, 6.8 out of 10. So, yeah, well regarded for 1959. And what's interesting about, if you look at the Parents' Guide information about this, there's some wonderful... I'm going to move this a bit. There's some wonderful information about the scary scenes. So on all IMDb pages, there's a Parents' Guide, which you can click on, which tells you if there's going to be sex and nudity in it, is there going to be any violence and gore. So in this film, they're just kissing. So hold on. There's a little bit of violence, a little bit of profanity. There's a damn you in one scene. There's a lot of adults drinking and smoking all the time, which is probably quite standard in 1959.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in the frightening and intense scenes, one person's commented here saying the scene where the caretaker's wife is shown is very frightening. As a kid, this scene gave me one of the worst scares I can remember. For years after, and to be honest, to this very day, if I found myself in a dark room while thinking of this, I'd find myself urgently looking for a light switch. So this is intense. You know, we've got someone here who watched it classically as a kid. You know, often those kind of, you know, horror movie kid experiences are super ingrained. And here we have this movie, for someone out there, was that movie they watched as a kid, and there's a scene we'll get around to with the caretaker's wife, which for them was genuinely terrifying.
Very interesting to see
It's exciting.
what it will be like, and whether I will find it terrifying at
It's
all.
a bit of a build-up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you know it won't. But yeah, look, I mean, that's why we're trying to see what the intention of the director is as well. So that's the first 5 minutes of Vincent Price in House on Haunted Hill in HD 1959. You can go watch those first 5 minutes now on YouTube. And next week we're watching the next 5 minutes. So get onto those 5 minutes to join us on this journey into this. Should we go for a quick Vox Pop? I think there was a guy in military costume from the Tas Pop back in the day.
Tas Pop South. All right.
This is Media Tackle here on Edge Radio 99.3. I'm Dr. Craig, joined by BA Zeke.
It's Media Malship.
All right, so hey, if you could give me your name and what this cosplay object is that you're doing.
Right, so my name is Roman, and this cosplay is meant to be based off Marvel. It's meant to be a Shield Trooper. I kind of customized it to be a bit cooler looking. So that's 3D printed. That's not real, sadly. But the rest I just bought from eBay. It's quite simple here.
Right, so the 3D printing stuff, how did you go about getting the 3D printing?
So my stepdad does 3D printing, so I got him to 3D print it. So I'm going to give credit to him. I did not do any of that, so...
It is really cool. So this is a kind of shield like the Marvel Universe Shield guy.
Yep. So it's like a shield trooper, yeah.
So like like the storm, like I've always loved in Star Wars the Stormtroopers, the Stormtrooper uniform. That very much has that vibe.
Yes, it does.
All right. So what's been the biggest surprise, the craziest thing so far at Test Pop South you've encountered?
Oh, well, I think this is the most people I've seen since last time I went, so that's what all I find surprising. And yeah.
It is good to see so many people out during, kind of waking up after so many years lockdown and so forth.
Yes.
All right, so the next thing is, this has been a tricky question for many people. Is there such a thing as a Tasmanian pop culture?
Can't answer that, no. No.
Do you think if you were going to wear this costume outside of the convention, where would be a good spot to wear this kind of military costume?
Probably the best spot would be out there, so you don't get the cops called on you. So at the markets. Oh, sorry,
That would be perfect. Well, thanks so much for this Vox Pop. I hope you have a great afternoon and a brilliant, spectacular costume. Well done. Oh, any final words?
No, I'm empty.
Thank you very much.
I'm on. Are you on? You should be.
Alright, well, the next story.
Oh, maybe you're just really low. I don't know why.
The next story we're going to explore is Ferris Bueller's film getting a spin-off. Have you ever seen Ferris Bueller?
I've not. I don't know what it. Oh, maybe. Wait. Maybe your microphone just isn't getting picked up. Mine's getting picked up. Hello. Maybe switch to this one.
Mike's like this.
There we go.
Oh,
That one.
yeah,
That one's
that
working.
one. All right.
I don't know what's wrong with this one. Oh well.
I don't know. Does it?
The joys of live radio.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I get to. Okay, anyway. So Ferris Bueller's spin-off. Did you know there's going to be a Ferris Bueller spin-off?
Back in the day.
Well, now. There will
Oh,
be.
now.
Yeah. So there was Ferris Bueller in 1986. The amusing journey of Matthew Broderick skipping off on school for a day. What characters would you spin off from Ferris Bueller? If you were to do a spin-off.
I mean, you could do. I don't know whether it would count as a spin-off, but you could just do a show with Ferris Bueller. I feel like that'd be quite fun.
Well, but that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be the characters that are going to be focused on is going to be the two valets who famously take Cameron's sports car, the dad's sports car, on a joyride.
Oh, is
Do
it
you
going to be about?
remember that scene? Yeah, it's going to be about these guys, those two valets,
Okay.
who take the car off. So, and it's interesting because we've got like Cobra Kai at the moment, the Karate Kid, sequel television experience that you can watch on various streaming platforms. So there is this really, it's an interesting going back to these 80 films, called 80 films. Ferris Bueller's Day Off never got a sequel, but now there's two of the creators of Cobra Kai have been tapped on the shoulders to be involved in a Ferris Bueller's Day Off spin-off, which they say they have great wish in fulfilling what happens to those two valets who took the amazing Ferrari on the ultimate joyride. We only got a couple of glimpses of them leaving, cresting a giant hill, taking the car airborne, and then returning it. What's going on in their lives? You know, one of the most interesting side character experiences that I saw was it Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, the Tom Shepard play. So you've got Hamlet, and then Tom Shepard famously did his play on those two minor characters, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and the whole film, the whole play is from their experience, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, as they're navigating, they're coming into and out of the Hamlet story as they would in Hamlet, but then the I think it goes for 90 minutes. The rest of that time is spent with them on their journey. Was never, and as a fan fiction connoisseur, that's one of the standard fan fiction genres. You take a marginal character and then you do 5,000 words or more on what that character did during that adventure. What were the Ewoks doing in Return of the Jedi?
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, you could even argue now Boba Fett from Star Wars and stuff like that. Definitely
Bit of a side character.
Or like a
Given the
very
whole
side
story.
character, if you think about it. He's only in it for not that long.
It was like 2 words of dialogue in the whole trilogy.
Yep, and then he gets his own show. Comes back in. Well, I guess you could even argue it's a spin. That's a spin-off of The Mandalorian, because he shows up in The Mandalorian and then goes off, and then Boba Fett happens, and then you get to see what happens before and then after.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting when you take, I think, a kind of completely peripheral character like the two valets in Ferris Bueller, a super peripheral, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern level type of side character. So interesting, intriguing to see if they can make that work.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, because at least with like a Boba Fett, as I said before, so many people were mesmerized just by the look of Boba Fett. Whereas the valets, I'm sure people were like, "Oh, they're interesting," but I don't think anybody was expecting or wanting any more valet content from Ferris Bueller. But hopefully, it will be good.
Be careful what you wish for. Of course, the Boba Fett fulfillment of the Boba Fett fantasy didn't quite pay off.
No, it didn't.
In terms of many people being quite critical of the fact that they took this character and they gave him, well, basically, the idea being that the Mandalorian really stole the Boba Fett narrative, that whole kind of bounty hunter on the run, lone wolf and cub style, meeting a baby, and that kind of, he's still a kind of badass character on this journey, but instead, Boba Fett's, that version of Boba Fett was taken by the Mandalorian, so instead they gave him crime lord story plot in Tatooine, which but on that idea of creating fan fiction material, there was another interesting story on Giant Freaking Robot. On Star Wars should do a crossover with the Predator. This guy pitching this Star Wars crossover with Predator, saying that now that Disney owns these properties, Star Wars Predator license, and Predator recently had success with the Prey film, where they tell the story of the I think it's an Apache Indian encountering the Predator.
Yes. I'm not
back
too
in
sure.
late
All I know
1800s,
is that they are
early 1800s.
a Native American.
Yeah, so this whole pitch, and it's a good 3,000 words, pitches the Ewoks as being great challenges for the Predator, of course. The whole idea of the Predator is a kind of big sports hunter that comes down. There's a funny Reddit post I read about, that in the Predator films we watch, the Predator always dies. Like, he gets his ass kicked by the human, right? And the human is not Predator level, right? The Predator is meant to be this super huntsman who's teched up and is trained to hunt, right? Yet he gets his ass kicked by the humans who are just caught up in his hunting. So the this Reddit poster was saying that basically these predators that we see in the films are the equivalent of the dentist that goes safari hunting and buys his kills.
That's true.
Yeah.
But one interesting thing that because I've watched Predator, but I watched it years ago. But it was interesting hearing people talk about the idea of the predators and everything, and apparently what kind of weapons and stuff they use is dependent on what the prey level is. So if it's a bear, I think in the I think it's from the trailers. I think it's how I know because I haven't seen the film. But he fights a bear.
Yeah.
But I think hand-to-hand combat with the bear, because that's the level of challenge
to
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the best sportsmanship of what, and then other creatures usually humans. I think they view them as not prey, like they're too low level, until obviously they.
Unless they're armed or they've got a gun and they attack.
Yeah, and then it raises up the level, because I think obviously they have the visor or whatever, and I think that can tell them the
Really?
level of danger or something.
Like they've got like a video game component in their headset saying,
Yeah, I think so.
you're now unlocked level 2 weapons.
Yeah, and it's basically just to tell them
Fight.
how much they need to hold back.
Wow,
Yeah.
that would be fascinating to revisit some of those scenes and unpack them in terms of a game logic, which might be undersetting them. I haven't got it here, but another interesting story I did come across was from the Archie comic book space. I don't know if you ever got into Archie comics or Rivendell.
No, I've seen them. I've heard of Rivendell, but I've never gotten into them.
Well, there was a bizarre bit of news that in Archie Comics, Betty will fight John Carpenter's seminal horror monster, The Thing, in the latest comic series. Yeah. So, Archie Comics has done strange stuff in the past. They've had encounters with zombies. They've really been pushing the genre blurring of this high school drama comedy Archie comic that goes way back to like the 50s to really mash it up with bizarre genres. Now they're doing horror sci-fi with The Thing, with John Carpenter's The Thing. So, yeah, that'll be intriguing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard of the crossovers that they've done before. I can't remember which one I heard of, but I've seen them before.
Yeah, there's one where it's in the is it the Twilight universe, or anyway, Jughead gets turned into a werewolf. One of them. Yeah, there's been a number of crossovers with established properties, which involve the characters undergoing some horror experience. Yeah. Well, let's end up. We're near the end of the hour. With some interesting advice on how to reduce screen time. Given we talk so much about watching screens, I feel like we should do health advisory warnings now on our show.
Yeah.
To not watch screens. So there's an interesting article from Lifehacker talking about how to reduce your screen time with apps according to Reddit. Reddit, of course, being the popular forum commentary space. This article talks about some posts on Reddit about screen hygiene. Well, I guess eye and mental health hygiene. So one is to divide your phone use into necessary and unnecessary time. So the Reddit user is going, what you really need to reduce is not your screen time, but the time wasted on unproductive stuff on your phone. So their advice is to go through your phone and remove anything that's considered wasteful, like a game. Keep in mind social media apps on your phone might be informative and helpful. And basically only leave on your phone all the important apps. And the second advice being keep your phone away from you. That's how that sounds. So you can toggle limits for apps using your phone to circumvent your use of it. So I know I use some settings to remind me to not use YouTube after 10. Right? So you can do this kind of thing, and then do anything else apart from looking at your mobile phone. So when you're doing anything else, eating, reading, watching TV, talking to friends, studying, working, put your phone out of arm's reach. And this Reddit post goes on to say, if I'm working on something that requires my utmost attention, I put my phone in the other room.
Yeah.
To physically... You do anything like that? You put your phone in the other room?
I do in the morning, generally. I leave my phone. I use it as an alarm, so I grab it in the morning. I don't open anything apart from turning off my alarm, getting out of bed, and I usually just leave my phone on my bedside table, and then I just go about my morning, and then eventually I'll come back down, and then grab it at that stage, have a look at it, and then probably just go on through my day, and then sometimes I'll just put it somewhere and just go, I need to do something else. So I definitely put it in a different room, or just put it across the room or something like that, somewhere that's not on me.
Other advice is not to eat in front of your phone.
Yeah.
And
I like to go outside if it's sunny here, because it's very rarely sunny. So I like to go and sit outside. I'll have my phone, but I'll generally just sit it down and just try not to touch it.
Try and be mindful of the world around you,
Yeah.
as opposed to lose yourself in some app. Keep it out of your bedroom, especially at bedtime.
I have it in my bedroom, so
Another user suggested you could try to organize patterns of behavior that make you spend patterns of behavior that make you spend time on your phone. So notice those patterns where you're spending a lot of time on the phone. For instance, after breakfast, I always sit in this one chair and mess around for Reddit for a long time. Then you could try to break that pattern, such as going for a walk or doing something else during that time, rather than just automatically going to use it. Well, that's been Media Mothership for another week. I think we've really, helped people there. We haven't, but I think we'll bring this back. We'll do a better effort next week of trying to do some advisory warnings of screen time as we promote screen time on the other hand. Yeah,
that's right. We gotta balance it out.
Well, keep listening to Edge Radio. We've got Adrian's show with some great music coming up next. And next week we'll be continuing with the next 5 minutes of House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price. So check that out.
That's right. Follow us on
Facebook,
Instagram, probably Twitter. There's everything.
Twitch and YouTube.
Follow us. So thank you for watching Media Mothership. Coming up is Bridging Vis-a-Vis by Hachika. Or Hachiku.